a giraffe has the longest neck. And beware of a crocodile attack. Tack, tack, the flamingo always stands on one leg. And a coconut is harder than a boiled egg. The hippopotamus has the biggest mouth. And the monkey can shout very loud, loud, loud. You can tell me what you want, but the elephant, he has the biggest bottom in the whole wide land. And the giraffe has the longest neck. And beware of a crocodile attack. Tack, tack, the parrot tells you anything you want to hear. The peacock's colored feathers always make you cheer. And the ant has the strongest back. The mosquito will bite you in your neck, neck, neck. You can tell me what you want.
Good morning, everybody. It's story time again. Can you remember which animal we're focusing on this week? That's right, it's the elephant. I'm going to have to put this one next to me, I think, otherwise it might blow away. There we go. Now, the story I've chosen today is about one of my favourite elephant families. It's the large family. And the story today is called A Quiet Night In, which is what most of us are having right now. I want you all in bed early tonight, said Mrs. Large. It's Daddy's birthday and we're going to have a quiet night in. Can we be there too? Asked Laura. No, said Mrs. Large. It wouldn't be quiet with you lot all charging around like a herd of elephants. But we are a herd of elephants, said Lester. Smarty pants, said Mrs. Large. Come on now, coats on, it's time for school. That evening, Mrs. Large had the children bathed and in their pyjamas before they'd even had their tea. They were all very cross. It's only 4:30, said Lester. It's not even dark yet. Well, it soon will be, said Mrs. Large grimly. Look, they've all had a bath. Look at their faces. They don't seem too pleased at all, apart from the baby. What's the baby doing? Squirting toothpaste on the floor? Oh my goodness, what a naughty baby. After tea, the children set about making place cards and decorations for the dinner table. Then they all tidied up. Then Mrs. Large tidied up again. Mr. Large arrived home looking very tired. We're all going to bed, said Lester. So you can be quiet, said Laura. Without us, said Luke. Shh, said the baby. Happy birthday, said Mrs. Large. Come and see the table. Mr. Large sank heavily into the sofa. Oh, it's lovely, dear, he said. But do you think we could have our dinner on trays in front of the TV? I'm feeling a bit tired. Oh, poor Dad. I think all he wants to do is have a nap on the couch. Of course, said Mrs. Large, it is your birthday. You can have whatever you want. We'll help, said Luke. The children ran to the kitchen and brought 2 trays. I'll set them. We don't want everything ending up on the floor, said Mrs. Large. Wonder what they're going to have for their dinner. Wonder what your favourite dinner is. Chicken nuggets? Fish fingers? Oh, a roast dinner. Oh, it's making me hungry. Can we have a story before we go to bed? Asked Luke. Please, said Lester. Go on, Dad, said Laura. Just one. Story, said the baby. Oh, all right then, said Mr. Large. Just one then. Lester chose the book and they all cuddled up on the sofa. Mr. Large opened the book and began to read. One day, Binky Bus drove out of the garage. Hello, he called to his friend Mickey Milkfloat. I don't like that one, said Laura. It's a boy's story. Look, said Mr. Large, if you're going to argue about it, you can all go straight to bed without any story. So they sat and listened while Mr. Large read to them. Oh dear. Wonder if any of you argue like that in your house sometimes. I know I did with my brother. After a while he stopped. Go on, Daddy, said Luke. What happened after he bumped into Danny Dustcart? Did they have a fight? Asked Lester. Look, said Laura. Daddy's asleep. Shh, said the baby. Oh dear, he hasn't even had his tea yet. Poor Dad. Mrs. Large laughed. Poor Daddy, she said. Never mind, we'll let him snooze a bit longer while I take you all up to bed. Will you just finish the story, Mum? Asked Lester. We don't know what happens in the end, said Luke. Please, said Laura. Story, said the baby. Move up then, said Mrs. Large. She picked up the book and began to read. Watch where you're going, you silly dustcart, said Binky. Just then, Pip the police car came driving by. What do you think's going to happen to Mum now? We've got poor Dad asleep on the couch and Mum's reading the story. What will happen next, I wonder? Let's see if you're right. Uh-oh. After a while, Mrs. Large stopped reading. What's that strange noise? Asked Lester. It's Mummy snoring, said Luke. Daddy's snoring too. They must be very tired, said Laura kindly. Shh, said the baby. The children crept from the sofa and fetched a blanket. They covered Mr. and Mrs. Large and tucked them in. Oh dear, they haven't had their tea yet, and now the children are having to tuck them in. We'd better put ourselves to bed, said Lester. Come on. Shall we take the food up with us? Asked Luke. It is on trays. It's a pity to waste it, said Laura. I'm sure they wouldn't mind. Anyway, they wanted a quiet night in. Shh, said the baby. And there they are. The children ended up having their tea for them, left them on the couch and went to bed themselves. That was a nice story, wasn't it? I wonder what you're going to do with your families in your house tonight. Maybe you will watch the television with them. Maybe you'll read a story like Mr. and Mrs. Large. I hope your mums and dads don't fall asleep though. Hope you enjoyed that reception, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Goodbye.